Dad, I can't take this anymore. If she moves back in, I'll stay at my friend's house instead. That was what my 15-year-old son, Liam, said while still holding the game controller that had been taken apart and stripped of components. He was on the verge of tears, not because of the device, but because he couldn't understand why our home had become a place where he had to fear someone who lived under the same roof. Even Emily, my 13-year-old daughter, stood behind him clutching the side of her shirt, waiting for me to promise that what they feared would not happen again. My name is Ethan, 38, a construction engineer. I've been widowed for 5 years. I remarried my wife, Rebecca, 36, who works as an office administrator. She has 3 kids, Kayla, 16, Owen, 10, and Mia, 7. I have 2. Together, we're supposed to be a blended family of 7. When we first married, I genuinely believed that if we tried hard enough, the kids would slowly find their place and things would eventually stabilize. But not everyone wants harmony, and Kayla, Rebecca's oldest daughter, was the one who turned the house upside down every time she appeared. The very first time Rebecca brought Kayla over after a visit to her biological father, I felt the tension instantly. Kayla didn't greet anyone, didn't look at anyone, behaved like the rest of us were intruding on her territory. I told myself it was typical teenage behavior. But soon things shifted in a direction I couldn't ignore. Loose change disappeared. Emily's pencil case lost its lid. Liam's phone charger vanished. No one besides Kayla had been around these items. Rebecca and I talked about it repeatedly. At first, she admitted Kayla could be impulsive, but always followed it with the excuse that teenagers act out. I avoided making a big deal. Kids sometimes rebel to get attention. But it didn't stop at small things. It escalated. My old watch, the pair of earrings Rebecca lost and assumed she misplaced, Liam's wireless earbuds. Rebecca started to worry, but even then she hesitated to confront the truth, because admitting it meant admitting that Kayla was out of control. Then Kayla's father filed for relocation due to work and fought for Kayla to live with him. Rebecca cried for days, went to court, tried everything to stop it. But Kayla chose to go with him. When the judge approved the relocation, Rebecca broke down. And I'll be honest, the months after Kayla left were the calmest this house had been since the day we blended families. The peace ended the moment Kayla returned for her first scheduled visit. The same pattern emerged instantly: missing items, defiant attitude, boundary breaking, sneaking into rooms, rifling through belongings. Rebecca still tried to explain it away, but I could see she was exhausted. She knew but couldn't bring herself to accept it. Then came the most recent visit, the one that broke my kids completely. Liam discovered his Nintendo Switch had been taken apart, with core components missing. Coincidentally, Kayla had complained the day before that her own Switch at her dad's house was broken and needed parts. No direct evidence, but Liam's expression told me everything. He wasn't angry, he was scared. That night Liam said, "I don't want her here anymore. I don't feel safe." Emily nodded silently. I talked to Rebecca. She said she needed time, but I told her time didn't change the fact that 2 of our kids couldn't sleep without locking their doors anymore. She cried, said she didn't want to lose her daughter again, begged me to be patient. And then, the moment that changed everything happened. During dinner the next evening, Kayla casually said, "Mom, I want to move back here permanently. Living over there sucks." Before I could react, Rebecca answered instantly, almost desperately, "Yes. Of course you can." No discussion. No warning. No thought about the consequences for the 5 other people in the house. It was that moment, that exact second, that told me our marriage wasn't just facing conflict. It was approaching a point where decisions could not be avoided anymore. After that dinner where Rebecca impulsively agreed to let Kayla move in permanently, the atmosphere in the house felt as if all the air had been sucked out. No one spoke. Even Owen and Mia, who were usually loud, stayed silent. Liam and Emily looked at me with the same expression. Say something. Stop this. Fix it. But I knew that confronting it in front of Kayla would only escalate things. I waited until all the kids went to their rooms before pulling Rebecca into my office. I asked her, "Do you really think this is possible? My kids are terrified of her. They don't even feel safe opening their own doors." Rebecca responded with a voice that was both shaky and defensive, "I couldn't say no to her. Not in front of her. She already thinks I abandoned her once." I understood her fear of losing her child. But the price she was willing to pay was forcing the rest of the family to live with someone everyone had to hide their belongings from. I told her that I wanted to support her, but not at the expense of Liam's and Emily's mental well-being. Rebecca covered her face and said something that stuck with me for days. "Ethan, I already lost one husband. I cannot lose my daughter too." I didn't know how to respond. I sympathized with her. But I also knew we were running out of space to compromise. The harder she clung to Kayla, the more destructive Kayla became, and the more the other children suffered. The next morning I found Liam packing some of his important items. His passport, savings envelope, and external hard drive. "I'm not leaving," he said. "But my room will stay locked. And if she moves in, I will actually leave." It was the first time he had ever spoken with such certainty. Emily didn't say a word, but she had started storing even small things like hair ties inside a locking box. A 13-year-old shouldn't have to live like that. Rebecca refused to look directly at these signs. She insisted the kids were overreacting. I handed her a long list of items that had gone missing over the last 2 years. I had documented everything. She stared at it for nearly a minute. But instead of accepting the problem, she quietly said, "Kayla just needs more love. The more we push her away, the worse she gets." I told her plainly, "This house cannot become a rehab center for one child while the other 4 become collateral damage." Rebecca went silent. That weekend, Kayla approached me on her own. That alone was unusual. I thought maybe she wanted to talk seriously. But no. She didn't apologize, didn't explain herself. She just said, "It's boring at Dad's house. I don't get along with his new wife. There's more stuff here anyway." I asked her, "What do you mean by more stuff?" Kayla shrugged, "Just more. People don't keep track of everything here." A chill ran through me. She said it casually, like it was normal. Like other people's belongings were simply available for her to choose from. That night, Rebecca and I had the most heated conversation we'd ever had. I laid down the boundary. If Kayla moved in permanently, I would take Liam and Emily elsewhere. Not as a threat, as an unavoidable reality. Rebecca cried, insisted I was prioritizing my biological children, but I didn't argue. I was protecting them. And protecting your children isn't favoritism. It's responsibility. Just when I thought the situation had reached its limit, the first twist landed. Rebecca received a long text message from the new wife of Kayla's father. Attached were photos of items Kayla had stolen in their home: makeup, chargers, cash, small electronics, and shockingly, a silver bracelet that belonged to Rebecca, which she believed she lost 6 months earlier. The woman wrote, "I don't know if you're dealing with this too, but we cannot keep her here anymore. She's taken things from me, my daughter, and even from her father. If you're considering letting her move in, please prepare yourself." Rebecca read the message 3 times. Her hands trembled the entire time. I said nothing. She said nothing. But in her eyes I saw something shift. Rebecca finally realized that Kayla wasn't just acting out. Kayla was a real danger to the other kids in the house. And that was only the beginning. After Rebecca received the photos from Kayla's father's new wife, the entire house fell into a heavy silence that lasted for 2 days. She kept looking at the message over and over again, her expression shifting from disbelief to fear, then to a kind of desperate denial. But even then, she still didn't say out loud the one truth both of us already understood. Kayla could not safely live in the same house as the other 4 children. Liam and Emily became hypervigilant. They didn't wait for me to set rules, they created their own. Liam avoided crossing paths with Kayla and began locking his room even if he was just going downstairs for a drink. Emily stored some of her belongings in my room for safety. It was heartbreaking to watch, and every moment of it reminded me that our situation was no longer something we could negotiate or soften with patience. On the 3rd night, Rebecca finally spoke up. She admitted that the items in the photos were indeed hers, and the fact that Kayla had carried them for months without anyone knowing left her shocked and guilty. But instead of moving toward a solution, she spiraled into self-blame. If she has to steal like that, doesn't that mean I completely failed her? I told her calmly, "This isn't about failure. It's about protecting the rest of the kids." She went quiet. I proposed a clear plan. Kayla would finish her scheduled visit, but there would be no permanent move-in. If Kayla needed professional help, I was willing to pay for it and support the process. But she could not live in a space where 4 other children had to guard their things the way people guard valuables in a shared hostel. I genuinely expected Rebecca to agree. She didn't. With a steady voice, she said, "If she goes back to her father's unchecked, she'll get worse. I want her here so I can fix it." I had to keep my tone level. Fixing her doesn't mean turning the rest of the kids into collateral damage. Rebecca broke down crying, not because she disagreed but because she had run out of ways to protect Kayla without hurting everyone else. That night, things escalated. Emily ran downstairs sobbing, saying Kayla had walked into her room without permission. When I confronted Kayla, she stood there as if nothing was wrong. I was just seeing if she had anything new I could borrow. I asked, Borrow or take? Kayla shrugged. Same thing. I realized then that this conversation needed Rebecca involved. I asked her to join me in speaking to Kayla. But before I could even begin, Kayla snapped. You two are always against me. Mom, he's just trying to get rid of me so he only has his kids left. Her voice grew sharper, louder, hostile. And then she pointed at Rebecca and said, if you try to send me away again, I swear I'll make every single one of you miserable. The room froze. Owen and Mia, who had been lingering outside the doorway, backed away. Emily clung to my arm, trembling. Rebecca began crying silently. But her tears this time weren't guilt, they were realization. She saw what I had been seeing for years. Kayla's problem wasn't teenage rebellion. It was a dangerous lack of boundaries, empathy, and impulse control. And worse, Rebecca had lost all authority over her daughter. I told Rebecca that in the morning, I would take Liam and Emily to a hotel temporarily, not as punishment but for safety. Rebecca didn't argue. She stared at the floor as if she had finally reached the point she'd been terrified to confront. And then came the second twist, the one that erased the last traces of doubt. Late that night, Rebecca entered our room shaking. She said she had checked the small mini camera she had installed months ago. Something she originally told me was to see whether Mia was napping properly. But that wasn't true. She had installed it because she'd been doubting Kayla for months. On the camera, Kayla was clearly seen sneaking into Rebecca's room and taking her wallet. She opened the closet, rifled through drawers, calmly pulled out cash, folded it, and slipped it into her pocket. She moved with the ease of someone who had done this dozens of times. Rebecca handed me the phone with trembling fingers. She didn't speak. I didn't either. The truth didn't need words. Rebecca finally whispered, Ethan, you were right. And it was at that moment that I understood something deeper. Our marriage wasn't collapsing, but the way we had been handling our blended family absolutely was. And what came next would determine whether we could rebuild anything at all. The video of Kayla taking money from Rebecca's wallet didn't trigger some emotional breakthrough or family unity moment. It didn't make anyone suddenly understand or heal. It simply made the truth undeniable. Kayla could not safely live under the same roof as the other 4 children. Not for a month. Not on trial. Not at all. 24 hours later, Rebecca and I sat down. No tears. No yelling. No speeches. Just reality laid bare. Rebecca said quietly, I can't let her keep doing this. I know. I've known for a long time. I just didn't want to admit it. I asked, so what do you want to do now? Her answer came slowly but clearly, I don't want this family to fall apart. But I also can't pretend the other kids aren't scared. I'll handle Kayla the right way. No more covering for her. I told her I didn't want a divorce. I wasn't trying to break the family. I wasn't punishing anyone. But I laid down boundaries that were no longer negotiable. Kayla cannot live here full-time. She must undergo a formal behavioral evaluation. Her visits must have structure, supervision, and strict limits. Rebecca must be the one taking responsibility. No more denial, no more excuses. The hard part wasn't saying these conditions. It was waiting to see whether Rebecca would accept them. But, for the first time in our marriage, she nodded without arguing. The next morning we sat with Kayla in the dining room. No shouting. No accusations. We simply showed her the video. Kayla froze for a few seconds, then shifted back into her usual defiant posture. She said, it's not a big deal. I was going to put it back. I replied, you can't treat other people's things like they're yours. Rebecca added, with a steady voice I hadn't heard from her before, I'm not covering for you anymore. I love you, but I will not let you hurt everyone else. Not again. Kayla had no response. That silence told me more than any explanation ever could. Rebecca informed her calmly, Kayla would return to her father's house. Rebecca would schedule a behavioral assessment immediately. Future visits would follow a strict plan, not based on what Kayla wanted, but on what kept everyone safe. Kayla exploded, slammed her hand on the table, accused us of giving up on her, and even blamed Rebecca for choosing the others. But Rebecca didn't back down. For the first time she held firm, nobody is abandoning you. But I am done letting your behavior control this house. Over the next few days, Rebecca did what she should have done long ago. She took responsibility. She called Kayla's father, explained everything, sent the video, and listed every item Kayla had stolen. Kayla's father started angry, then became quiet. He agreed to take Kayla in during the evaluation period. Inside our home, the tension broke almost immediately. Liam didn't need to lock his door constantly. Emily moved her belongings back into her own room. Even Owen and Mia, who once adored their older sister, seemed calmer without the constant chaos. Rebecca and I also began having real conversations. Not defensive ones, not emotional standoffs, actual discussions about rules, boundaries, and how to manage a blended family without sacrificing children to give someone a chance. Rebecca eventually admitted, "I was so afraid of losing her that I almost lost everyone else." I didn't say anything to that. She already understood. Kayla, meanwhile, didn't suddenly become an angel. There was no miraculous shift. She didn't apologize with tears or make dramatic confessions. But during the early evaluation process she did say one thing that stood out: "I don't want people to be scared of me."